Hello, Lily Quinn here. Hope you're doing well. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a few troubleshooting tips or points on the machine. The first is the tension. On this machine, I'm using the Singer 4411. This part here, there are 3 dials at the top, or knobs if you choose to call it that way. The tension dial is from 0 through 9, okay, on this machine. Most machines have 0 through 9. Others I've seen 0 through 6 and so on. But you would see that there's a line connecting the 3 and 5 to the 4, because the 4 is the average tension number that we tend to use for most fabrics. If the fabric is very thick and it has to go through density, the density of the fabric is high, you can reduce the tension to about 3 or less. However, from experience, I would advise that you use the length, the stitch length, instead to control the density of the stitches and maintain the tension at 4. In other words, don't move it, keep it at 4. It's about the best position. On very rare occasions, you may move it to 3. Now, to 5 or higher tension, it means you are working with a very light fabric and you want the stitches to be more tight on there. Next is needle positioning on this one, the middle line. We do not bother with the needle position as much. Most of the time it's in the middle. But when we are sewing a zipper, we make use of the right or the left. It helps a lot. But for average or normal sewing, we keep it at the middle. Now, next is this knob here. It's called the take up or pick up lever. If every machine has it, some of them they don't come up and out like this one. Regardless, they are there. It's called the take up or pick up lever. Now, what it does is, based on the tension, it receives and feeds thread to the needle in specific amounts. Okay, so sometimes it's giving it faster if the tension is higher, and sometimes it's giving it sparingly if the tension is higher, it gives it sparingly. If the tension is lower, it gives more thread to the needle. So when it's on the average, it gives just the right amount of thread, or feeds just the right amount of thread to the needle. Now, many times people miss threading this take-up lever, and I put it as part of my troubleshooting issues, because when you don't pass the string through this take-up lever, or you forget or you miss it, it's going to affect the quality of the stitches. You're going to have looping of threading at the bottom of your sewing. You don't want that to happen. Sometimes it even shifts the bobbin case, and that can damage the positioning and of the bobbin case, and before you know it, it's not even sewing, it's not sitting right for you to sew peacefully. So as much as possible, make sure when you're threading you don't miss the take up or pick up lever. Also, I've been asked a lot about stitch length and stitch width. Stitch length on most machines, it will say it like over here, this is the stitch length, okay? This is the stitch length. It's also a dial that goes from 0 to 4. Some machines, it goes from 0 to 5. Regardless of what numbers are here, that's your stitch length because it's indicating a stitch length. If you have an older model that doesn't have labels, or it doesn't label it as length, then you may look out for things like this. You can have like dashes which increase in size as you go to the left or to the right, depending on how it's put there. Or you can have a design like this. You know, either way, it's talking about the stitch length. It moves higher as you move the knob. Now, the stitch length generally around 3 gives you average stitching. Now the stitch width for this machine is here. The stitch width comes to play always when you have zigzags. If you want to sew any zigzag or design, the stitch width is what determines how much zig or zag you are going to be sewing. It also goes generally from 0 to 6, 0 to 5, you know, so sometimes it's very confusing which is which. Whenever you see stitch width, you're likely to see zigzag stuff like this there. It also starts either from a dash and then begins to increase the zigzag as you go to the left. That is with certain machines that don't come or have this dial. This is a separate dial. It's already labeled a width. So you are able to tell exactly what width you need. Let's say you put it on 3, which is generally what we put it on when we're doing zigzag. You can take it all the way to 6 if you want a bigger width. But when you put it to 0, that's where it's supposed to be when you're sewing straight. Okay, so many times the stitch width can come in the form of just numbers like this, or a zigzag pattern like this. For you to sew straight, make sure it's on the beginning where it's like straight over here. If you're going to sew zigzag, then you put it on any of these zigzag widths. If you don't have the pattern but do have 0 to 6, in other words numbers, it could be 0 to 5 as well, you position the number on your choice of width. Okay, like I said, sometimes you put it on 3 for general stitching. So that is as far as the settings of the machine, or the stitches width and length go. I want to throw in this last point. This can also affect the quality of your sewing. That is the needle sizes. If you have needle sizes 12 through 14, that's about, 12 is a small. 14 is like an average. Most machines that you buy will have a 14 inside the machine, or as an accessory for you to use, because most materials on the average will work with a size 14 needle. The moment you go into thicker fabric, then you should look into going from 16 through 18. Material or fabrics like denim, upholstery fabric, vinyl, leather. There's a special needle for leather, but regular needles can also sew leather. The only thing you have to do is make sure it's either 16 or 18. Dense, thick materials, okay? When you have thin to average weight fabrics, you can get away with 12 to 14. But when you're starting to go into folds of denim, upholstery, vinyl, and so on, change it to 16 or 18 size needles. If you don't know, when you go to the fabric store or material store, they're going to show you the sizes. And another time I'll show you how to replace needles when it breaks on the machine. But for now, these are a few troubleshooting areas on the machine that we need to know. Thank you, and keep on sewing.